All right, everybody, and welcome to episode 6 of the East to West Connection Wrestling Podcast. This is Sig representing the West. Over here somewhere, up top, down below, KG on the East Coast. Kev, how you doing this week, brother?
All right, happy to be here. Happy to get another episode in.
For sure. Pretty decent week of TV. We didn't have any pay-per-views or anything to run through this weekend. Kind of, it's still in the middle, building some stuff up. So with that, we're going to kick right into Raw this week. Hope you guys are all doing well. With the first that being said, still in Saginaw, Michigan. This is our third week in a row. So next week, I believe we'll be back with a live Raw. But for this week, we're still kicking things off in the same little rinky-dink arena in Saginaw, Michigan. But the big six-man tag, they hyped it real well last week. This is pushing the pay-per-view. We're going to see the British Bulldog, Owen Hart, and Yokozuna, against the three top baby faces at the time, Shawn Michaels, Diesel, and The Undertaker. All pressing into their big pay-per-view stuff coming up. So what'd you think of the match? I thought it took up about half the show, so it was solid for a TV match.
Yeah, I mean, when they're doing all this, pre-produced type stuff, it definitely took up a big chunk of it. So we had Owen Hart, Yokozuna, and the Bulldog versus Taker, HBK, and Diesel. So right before the match, as the intros were winding down, or before one team was announced before the other, we saw Shawn Michaels. We saw Shawn Michaels at some kind of charity event. Now, I don't know how you feel about this, but to me, I saw a drugged out, sweating profusely Shawn Michaels. This was right before he's going to lose his smile here pretty soon. So he just looked off. Like, I understand like it would be emotional, dealing with the kids and stuff. Like I totally got that, but like he was like sweating and just looked strung out, and he was getting emotional and started crying when he started talking. It was really weird. It kind of, I don't know. Did you catch that?
Yeah, no, I did. It's funny because especially knowing what we know about this point in Shawn's career, might not have been his healthiest or happiest point. Just some issues, drug issues or whatever going on. So, it's a little awkward to look back, and the way he reacted to it, like you said, it seemed out of place. He almost seemed uncomfortable being there. We see these things with, for instance, Macho Man or guys at the time, and they cherish and you see them strive in this situation.
Right.
Just good talkers, good spokesman for the company. And Shawn didn't come off that way here, so I agree. It came off weird, but when you have so few top superstars, you kind of need to have, it comes with the territory. So, but
right.
No, good call. It came off weird. Yeah, it came off awkward.
So we're going to see him lose his smile here, like we said, in a few short weeks. You can definitely hear as we get underway with this match. We can hear Vince's love infatuation for Diesel and HBK. Just a lot of, oh, yeah, just really into it. HBK seemed like he was in the whole match to me. It was like a 20-minute match, and he was in, getting his butt kicked the whole time. Not a whole lot on this show. Or in this match, I should say. But Yoko was massive. Man, he was huge. And we haven't really talked about him much, but for a guy his size, he was, at this point, he's kind of getting to the point where he's getting too big, and he's not really on much longer. But he's like, one of his legs are bigger than Shawn Michaels, like way bigger. And he's able to do kicks and move around the ring and belly-to-belly suplexes. So I wanted to point out his ability in the ring was really good. Out of the whole Samoan big guy, as we'll see another one later in the show, I thought he could really do some things in the ring and looked really believable as a monster in there.
For sure. No, good call. Again, I can't argue it. Yoko was always an awesome athlete. I remember when he came in, they billed him at 505 for the longest time, and then it was gradually increased, 567, 606, 785 pounder, so he didn't need to keep gaining the weight. Some guys, they need to put on the weight to look intimidating. It didn't need to happen in this situation. It was just unhealthy towards the end, but no, he could still move for sure, through a savate kick better than anybody. But by this point, he was towards the end of his career, and unfortunately, we'd see that come to a head not too long after this. The end of Yoko, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, he was only around, let's see, I want to say he came in 93, and this is 95 to 95, so he was only around maybe 3 years-ish, for somebody that was a champion.
He'll still stick around into 96 for a little while, but the push ends soon after here.
Yep. So actually, a big victory picked up by the British Bulldog as he pinned the champion Diesel. So they're going to have their big match at the next In Your House event. So pretty big win by the British Bulldog. At the end, we had a big schmaz again. We had Mabel coming in attacking Undertaker because they're going to have their match. Dean Douglas attacked Shawn Michaels. I thought that was a cool spot that they did. The front suplex on the steps. I thought that was pretty cool for 1995 by Dean Douglas on the Heartbreak Kid. So we're left with the baby faces. They're all been wiped out. They're all left for dead. Similar to what we've kind of seen on WCW recently with the Goons. They've been handling the baby faces here. So that's about all I have right there. As we start doing a little bit of recap on the Lawler and Bret Hart feud that's been going on for some time now. So what were your thoughts here on their feud that they had at this time?
Well, real quick, jumping back a step, just not to cut you off or anything, get too far ahead of myself. I did have some weird notes on that on the 6-man. We saw at one point Waylon Mercy in the crowd, not in the crowd, but in the walkway, taking notes about halfway through the match. She wasn't involved in a feud with anybody at this point and was really on the lower end of the card. So this caught me off guard. He didn't get himself involved because we later see Dean Douglas taking notes. That was part of his gimmick, so it made sense. And then, of course, he would get involved with Shawn later on towards the end. But the Waylon Mercy thing, I thought that was completely out of touch. And I guess if they were maybe looking to make him a top player at this point, but it ended up not happening, and we'd see his push cool off real quick. But no, into Yankem, Isaac Yankem and Bret Hart and Jerry Lawler saga. This was an ongoing feud, like you said, hot and cold with it. They were for a little while, but it was an on and off thing since essentially the King of the Ring, which would have been June of 1993. Here we are, we're in October of 95, and this is they're still pushing it as a hot angle. We saw Isaac Yankem with his debut, the big debut at SummerSlam of this year, right off the bat against Bret the Hitman Hart. Normally, you wouldn't see a debuting greenhorn, essentially, somebody as green as Isaac Yankem still was at this point. Now, don't get upset at that. I know he had a long run, Unabomb, with, and Smoky Mountain and things like that. I'm not saying he was green, but the character was green and not over. So to get thrown right in with Bret Hart and Jerry the King Lawler, that's high momentum. But I don't know if it's questionable if he lived up to what the push had in store. As an evil dentist, I would tend to say no. Just the gimmick alone, you're gonna chop yourself out at the legs with such a shitty gimmick. But no. So next week we're looking at a cage match with a double cage stipulation of if Jerry Lawler gets involved, he will find himself in a shark cage high above the ring. So it's we've seen it time and time again. They did it actually somewhat recently with Enzo, I think, a couple of years back in WWE. But they always like to bring out the shark cage. They must have paid for it, and they need to get their money's worth. So once every couple of years, they bust out the shark cage gimmick. But no, Bret versus Isaac Yankem. They did a long, probably almost 10 minutes of recap on this for the summer.
They replayed the whole match, I believe, right? Yeah.
It looked like it, and it was different than nowadays. You'll see video cuts to the exciting parts of matches. They just ran straight through a 10-minute linear video. It was actually kind of boring to watch back, but well, we'll see what happens next. Bret versus Isaac Yankem in the cage next week. So and of course, obviously, we will see Jerry Lawler get involved. They're not going to tease a stipulation like that and not deliver. Sure. We'll see the shark cage next week, and I think this is the one Jerry Lawler gets a nosebleed once he's up there, I think.
God, yeah. I remember this. I remember this happening. I actually remember this was kind of a big deal. The SummerSlam match, I don't remember so much with Bret and Yankem, but I did want to point out that Yankem was doing like a lot of high flying and high spots. At one point, he did the the diving clothesline or axe handle from the top ropes to the floor. Something you didn't really see from a guy 6'10" or whatever he was, 7 feet, whatever he was, somewhere in there they had him. So and the finish I thought was pretty cool when they had the DQ when Bret got his head caught in the rope. So that's continuing the feud. But as we talked about last week too, this is almost in a way it's like you have this guy, and I guess they had high hopes for Glenn Jacobs at this point, maybe not Isaac Yankem, but to put him in a match like that with Bret Hart, your perennial top guy, or at least one or two of the top guys, and to stick him right in there with the debuting guy. I mean, they must have had high expectations for him, but I just, like I said, the character, the evil dentist thing, I think they started not quite yet, but they're starting to realize like, okay, maybe these like kind of goofy gimmicks are not really working.
Right.
So
and it's not going to be much longer until WCW makes the shift to a more reality-based presentation. So the goofy cartoon characters are certainly on their way out. Not too long here.
Yes, definitely. So our next match, we actually had another match following this last match for the recap from SummerSlam. We had Skip with Sonny at ringside versus Fatu, formerly Fatu of the Head Shrinkers, before Rikishi here. We also had a did you notice the Tour de Force? Did you notice all the places that they were going to? They were hitting up the War Memorial. They were hitting up the Utica Odd. I think Glens Falls Civic Center. So like they were totally they were all in our
hit all our old stomping grounds for sure.
Exactly. That's funny. I actually have our stomping grounds in my notes. Stop reading my notes. So we have Skip, of course, hits the diving headbutt, which was kind of his finishing move at this time on Fatu. Is completely unfazed by it. He pops up and hits his big splash and gets the victory. Not much there. We go to another recap here from earlier tonight. We have the British Bulldog with a hat. Cutting a promo. Apparently the hat was given to him by King Diana, but it looked like a regular like corduroy hat. Just seemed weird. Or Queen, whatever, Princess Diana. Or whatever she was. I'm not up on my royal my heraldry history here. So yes, anyway, she received that. Okay. Okay. All right. So he received a hat. He's cutting a promo with the hat that he received from Princess Diana, which seemed very weird. Awful as we see Mabel get on the mic. I was like, oh God, I guess we find out why he never really talked after this. Right. And then we start seeing the big blue cage, which was cool because we don't see the big blue cage anymore. We see the chicken wire or whatever you want to call it, the standard steel cage. Right. So next week we have Bret Hart versus Isaac Yankem and the big blue steel cage. So we'll have that to look forward to. That's about all I had on Raw, unless you had anything on this Columbus Day edition here, 10/9/95. Did you have anything to add?
No, unfortunately, it was light. I didn't have a lot. The 6-man was the big thing. They're really pushing the individual matches in that one. So the first half of the show was essentially all you needed to see. And they're pushing the pay-per-view matches, the Intercontinental title, Shawn versus Dean Douglas, Taker versus Mabel. Actually, we're going to see a lot of these matches change before the pay-per-view, but what they're pushing right now, and of course the Bulldog versus Diesel for the heavyweight title. So no, it was a slow.
Will the hat be on the line in that match?
That's a good question. We'll have to ask King Diana.
King, I said Queen. Now, come on.
You said King at first. We'll go back and we'll watch. You said King at first. That's what I thought.
I said King. Oh God. Yeah. I was thinking of King Mabel, I guess. And Sir Mo. I thought they were all part of the royal family at this point.
Right. No, good call. You're right. No, that's all I had for Raw. We'll move on to Nitro here. Chicago, Illinois. We're live with Nitro, brother. So here we are. The opening, of course, you see the setup. Bischoff, Mongo, and Bobby the Brain all in jerseys. I thought it was funny. Bobby the Brain had a question mark for his number, and Mongo, of course, 76 representing the Bears. But interesting setup for Nitro. We start off like we said last week. We had a crazy Ric Flair promo interrupting the guys. This week it was Stinger out, and he's going to get to the bottom of the Randy Savage Lex Luger situation. Both guys are his friends, but they're still not on the same page. So Sting vows that by the end of the show, they're going to get everybody on the same page. All the top baby faces will be together here towards the end. Right after that, we saw Sting defend the U.S. title against John Tenta Shark, the big Shark Man. This is actually a good point for me to throw a little side story in since we're a little light on coverage this week. The Shark story, I find this really funny. He had an LSU tiger tattoo on his arm during his earthquake run. A lot of you might remember that big tiger on his arm. He went ahead and had that changed to an actual shark tattoo for this gimmick because he was told they had such high hopes for the gimmick. Some people think he was pressured into doing that. Others think he went about it himself. But if you actually go back and watch tape of Shark in WCW, you'll see, I forget what arm it is, but it's like, a bicep or outer tricep tattoo.
Yeah, so you'll see that
big, you'll see that big LSU tiger is now a shark in WCW. And God, what did this gimmick last? 6, 9 months, and it was essentially the last thing he did in his career of any importance up until
Well, until
Golga.
Golga.
That was a masked gimmick anyway, so it really didn't matter.
Right.
But no, anyway, no, Stinger makes short work of the Shark. My story was longer than the match, I think. Sting
Yeah,
retained.
definitely.
So, well, this, it's interesting. You'd had noted last week that we didn't see much of Sting in the past few weeks. They sure made up for it here in the first quarter hour. Stinger had a big interview segment, and then, of course, the title defense against Sharkman. So, and we're going to see him later on when it comes to getting to the bottom of this babyface situation. So, Stinger all over the top of the show.
Yeah, and I was happy to see Sting on because he was kind of been an afterthought the last few weeks. So, and he's going to get to the bottom of Savage and Luger here. They've been having a lot of tensions the last few weeks. He's buddies with both of them, I guess. So he's kind of caught in the middle. He wants to settle their differences. Right. We then see after the crossbody victory by Sting, we see another recap of the mustache. So the show starts off with a Hogan recap, and they go into another recap, and they're really pushing the mustache. They're really pushing the stash. It's a horrible. It's a travesty. It was like,
sure.
A part of him is now gone. So we move into Sabu versus Jerry Lynn. So two of our probably favorite talents from back around this time.
Yeah.
Or JL, I'm sorry. He was a masked character at this point. He had not been Jerry Lynn in the U.S. or as far as being on TV or ECW or anything like that. So I really enjoyed the theme that Sabu had at this time. And also we had, this is coming to you live from Chicago, like you said. So a real hot crowd, a good wrestling crowd. We see Justin Roberts at ringside as we get this match underway. We have some Sabu chants. I also heard some Hogan sucks chants. So interesting here. We're starting to see, as we mentioned a few weeks ago, that this is, Hogan's starting to lose some of his lust here as far as the Hulkamania and the character.
Yeah.
I did enjoy the match. It was a little spotty. It was a little quick. I kind of wish we got a little more back and forth, but Sabu definitely got all his stuff in. Sabu was if you've never seen a Sabu match, I feel sorry for you for one, but he had so many different moves and so innovative, as we talked about, such a unique move set and such a unique way of using different weapons, as we talked about, Sandman and Tommy Dreamer and some of these other guys that were so creative. Sabu took a high flying approach to weapons, and it could also work mat wrestling. I mean, he was just such a great worker, and I actually enjoyed going back and seeing that Sabu is actually on national television here, Monday Night Raw, and Jerry Lynn. I enjoyed that part of it. The match was missing a little bit for me, but all in all, I did enjoy the fact that they're at least both on national TV.
Right. No, agreed. However, I'll be a little more critical. I thought for a showcase type scenario, and even in the weeks past, yes, the spots themselves were getting showcased. They were almost too spotty though, just because if you don't have the time to make it a match where the spots mean something, they're just spots. So you're almost doing Sabu a disservice by having these really short matches where they're all just spotty. If you make them mean something, the spots will mean more in the end. And as we see, the Sabu experiment doesn't last too much longer here, so they really should have gotten a little more out of them than what they did. But it was a good chemistry, and we'll end up going on to see these two in a rematch at Halloween Havoc in just a couple of weeks here. So worked for me. Like I said, Sabu was only here for a short time, so happy to see it while we did on national TV.
Yeah, just happy to see him. Happy to see him on TV. He actually makes JL. I keep calling him Jerry Lynn. Makes JL tap, and then actually after the match, we see again that he gets into these crazy antics. He actually hits a sunset flip power bomb onto the floor, something that Jerry Lynn later uses in his feuds with RVD, kind of a staple of one of his moves. So it was kind of cool. You could see that at least Sabu was somebody that they wanted to feature. And as we kind of dug back and did our research, I know he's going to have another match here, and we can talk about it a little more in depth there. There was some disagreements among finances, issues of what they
right.
what was, or at least by his side of the story.
Right. If you search for any kind of Sabu shoot or YouTube shoot video, that kind of stuff is documented a little bit. Just go to the WCW portion of his career, and you'll hear about the disputes. He essentially wanted his tryout for X amount, and they thought that was his fee. And so it just some kind of miscommunication. And I'd heard he was kind of difficult to deal with when it came to numbers and such. As we'd see even later on in ECW, you'd see him pop in and out at different times. And I
Right.
think most of that was money issues. So he may have just been difficult to deal with, or we only get one side of the story sometimes. So,
Right.
Sabu WCW doesn't last too much longer. Essentially, is all we're saying here on that front. So.
No.
Next up, we saw Mean Gene and the Stinger. They're finally going to get down to the bottom of the Lex Luger Macho Man situation here. The situation has apparently Sting has come up with the brilliant idea that since they're already booked for matches against the Dungeon of the Goons at the pay-per-view, it's going to be Luger and Kamala, I believe, and Savage and Ming. I may have that switched around. That's not really the important part. But if and when they both win the matches, which obviously they're going to, I don't see Kamala being the reason this doesn't happen. Then they will go on and face each other. So we're going to see them again at the pay-per-view Halloween Havoc. As long as they win their matches against the Job Squad, we'll see Savage versus Luger one more time. You got to think there's title implications for the winner, perhaps, but this is definitely a top feud for. We've seen it every week. They're pushing these guys as the top deal. So,
right.
Next, we saw this was I enjoyed this one. We saw a limo pull up. Saw the debut of former New Japan and ECW superstar Chris Benoit, who will be with us next week. We'll go on to find out. Towards the end, they'll announce it's going to be him versus Eddie Guerrero. That's huge. As long as they don't pull away for half the match to show us Hulk Hogan showing up again. So I'm looking forward to what they got next week, as long as they don't cut away half the match. So, but now I enjoyed it. Benoit is on his way in. Now this is it's funny, as an ECW fan, first and foremost, growing up, it was bittersweet to see these guys leave, but just seeing them move on to greener pastures. Obviously they're making more money and they're more exposed to a bigger audience. You have to be happy for them too. So selfishly, we're upset to see them leave ECW, but as a fan of the work and the performers themselves, you have to be happy when these guys are able to move on and make better money and support their families. So maybe not in the case of Benoit. I guess that was kind of rough timing and wording on my part.
We're gonna have to cover Chris Benoit on the show. We're gonna have to do it. I can still say, and I think you agree with me on this, we're a fan of his work. We're a fan of the wrestler Chris Benoit. There's no doubt about it. Anyone that's a wrestling fan is probably a fan of his. So I don't want to make it ever sound like we're a fan of what he did outside of the ring. I don't think anybody can be a fan of that. We're not going to get into whether he should be in the Hall of Fame or this or that. The other thing, all that stuff is moot point. We're just going to cover Chris Benoit, the wrestler, and be a fan of his work in this time.
Right. That's all we can do. This, right. He's a big part of this this period of time. So it would be remiss of us to leave him out or any kind of asterisk. Right. That's not what we're trying to do here. So, but no. With that being said, he'll be here next week, and we'll deal with that as we get to it. But next up, we think we had Hawk versus Bubba Rogers. What did you have on that one?
Well, I was wondering where's Animal, because you just didn't. This went on for a while. I actually remember this, where Hawk was a singles wrestler. Was Animal hurt at this time? Was there some contract issues? Do you know the backstory on this at all?
Honestly, I'm not sure. I think this might have been when they were split. There was a brief period of time when they'd split up. But from what I had remembered, I thought Hawk went off to Japan and redid the Legion of Doom with I think it was Suke Sasaki, if I remember correctly. I thought Animal was the one who stayed in the States, but so I'm not 100% sure what the story was here, but the Road Warriors were not together, at least for this week or this point in their career.
Right. So a huge LOD chant, because this is their hometown, Chicago. I picked up on that. Hawk was extremely over. But before we see this, we see Disco Inferno back again, back with some dancing. So they're keeping him relevant, which is kind of cool because it's kind of a funny, goofy character. So they're kind of keeping him relevant. And they're keeping him on screen every week, even though he's not, he hasn't had a match the last few weeks. Hawk proceeds to beat the crap out of him throughout the arena and actually gets counted out. So Bubba Rogers actually picks up the victory via countout. So yeah, not much on this match. I guess we'll see Hawk. It won't be long until they go to WWF at this point as well.
Right. I think that more of the story was just getting Disco over as like the annoying heel. Funny little note, as he was still on the entrance while Hawk was passing him, he had stole a fan's hat and hung it on his shoulder pad. Just a funny little way to get over on the baby face there. But that essentially was the story of the match. We'd see Hawk repeatedly distracted by Disco. And of course, ended up leading to the count-out victory for Big Bubba. So, it was kind of funny to see Hawk versus Big Bubba, the Boss Man's former teammates in WWF land a few years prior.
Yeah, right.
But no, interesting stuff. Disco Inferno, I felt like was the story of the match here. So,
Yeah,
next
definitely.
up,
You're gonna see.
is the Hulk Hogan situation with Mean Gene. What'd you think about this stuff here, KG?
So I'm going to go back to what I said a few weeks ago, and we put the poll question out there, and no one seemed to be with me here. But Hulk Hogan was at this point as stale as a 10-year-old cookie. He was done. He was done by this point. The Hulkamania is dead. The crowd is booing Hogan. He comes out and he picks up on that. He picks up on that, and I'm sure this is not the first place that this has happened. So he comes out. He's wearing his all black garb. We see kind of Hollywood Hogan already. And this is what 7 months before we even see the NWO. Not to give anything away, but I think we already know what the NWO is all about. So we're seeing another side of Hogan. He comes out very heelish, and even in his demeanor, and as he's speaking to Mean Gene, he actually takes a shot at Vince at one point and says, the promoter of a dying company. And Hogan seems very agitated of the fact that he's, maybe he's starting to pick up on the fact that, he obviously he's got heat here with the Giant and stuff, but I think he's starting to see that it's not working. You guys put the belt on me. I'm coming out here. I'm getting booed. We hear another Andre reference to get away from Hogan for a second, but that just every time they say it, I got to roll my eyes. He talks about his son, and Andre's recently deceased at this point too, in 1995. Right? He died in 94. I want to say.
93.
93.
Yeah.
So it's like, why would you even, as Hogan was buddies with this guy, why would you? I don't get it. That's a topic for another day. But anyway, as after Hogan takes a shot here at Vince, a dying promoter of the rival company at this point, we get into the monster truck. And the monster truck here, we have the Dungeon of Goons. They're outside. Zodiac's hanging out of the monster truck, and they're eluding the police. Believe it or not, the Chicago PD, who we'll see a little bit later in the show. The monster truck eludes the police, but however, they can't enter the building. They have a restraining order. The Giant has a restraining order against Hogan, even though Hogan wants to get his hands on him. No mustache. He's dressed all in black. And I believe this was also part of, he was doing Thunder in Paradise? What is it called?
Yeah, I think that was the whole point of him getting his mustache shaved off. It was for a role, Hollywood role or something, whatever.
Well, he was doing that. He was doing the TNT show. I think he was filming for. I want to say. I hope I'm getting it right.
Under Paradise
yeah, something like that. So it was him and Carl Weathers, I think. So he wore the black and that was kind of what he wore on the show. So
right.
It was kind of teasing that as well. So we will finally see these two at Halloween Havoc. They're gonna clash like two titans in their monster trucks, and then they're gonna go have a wrestling match because those two things just go together so well. Right. So that brings us to our main event: Arn Anderson versus Ric Flair inside the steel cage here. So after our police interrupt and say that once again taken away from the match, we're gonna see what's happening backstage, right? Because the police are keeping these guys apart. I don't know.
Right.
Well, what did you have on the main event here?
Well, no, like you said, just to add into that, you think that's like they're gonna be the conclusion of the show or something. They make it sound like it's a big deal of Hogan going to find him. That's the last we hear of it, folks. So this is the second week in a row somebody goes off to find somebody in the back, and it's just, are they still back there? I don't know. But no, anyway, so on to the main event. Cage match, Arn Anderson and Ric Flair. I've enjoyed their contests the past few weeks. Some really good stuff. Even though I wasn't into the feud off the bat. The match was just getting started, and I feel like they cut him short this week, especially in a cage. If you're going to do the cage gimmick, you might want to give him some extra time. But no, we saw the brass knuckles from Arn Anderson when Flair was going for the figure four in the middle of the ring. Took him out 1, 2, 3. Saw a little bit of Flying Brian interference here as well. Really, it's just a continuation of the same story they're telling. Ric Flair's getting outnumbered every week. Arn Anderson takes on Brian Pillman as his protege at this point. But we're going to see it next week, or at least in the next coming weeks. Flair's looking for a partner. They're setting that up. So it's going to be Ric Flair and mystery partner against Arn and Flying Brian. Flair's looking to even the odds. And, of course, we know what comes next with Ric Flair. But now the match itself, I got to give it a snooze for what.
Sure.
Yeah. Just
The crowd
starting to
didn't
get
even
going.
know, and the crowd didn't even know what happened. There was no like,
Right.
Arn should have, seen that, hey, I'm putting on the knuckles, or there was nothing. You didn't even know what happened. So Flair
Right. Well,
is knocked.
from
He's
the
knocked out
position they did it
unconscious.
in, right, it's hard because Arn was already on the floor or on the mat, and then Flair was going for the figure four. So it's really hard to animate. You're going in your tights from the ground. It's easier when you're in a standing position to be
Right.
more blatant for the crowd. Because as a performer, you're performing for the crowd in the back. You're not performing for front row. You have to be big and seen, and it wasn't there. So you're right. The crowd was confused how Flair just got knocked out off a punch. They had to go back and explain with the replay what was there. But so no, I give him a miss on that one. But I don't know. I think the highlight of Nitro this week might have been Chris Benoit's hype video. I didn't have much for WCW this week.
No, and one other thing I wanted to point out too is after Flair takes the brass knuckles, he was out cold, so he lost the match.
Right.
Not a minute and a half later, he's standing behind the announce booth. I'm gonna get you, I'm gonna have my partner, and he just got knocked out. So he's gonna have his mystery partner. Once Flair, is off camera, they're mourning over the mustache, so they're still talking about Hogan, even though we haven't seen anything on camera. So I don't know. And we also hear Steve Mongo McMichael, good pay-per-view that thing. We hear Mongo, another goof, another classic line from Mongo. He's horrible. So anyway, put the finishing touches.
I want to jump in real quick. Just to jump in real quick, sorry. Just a quick shout out for that Twitter account. It's getting pretty viral. So that's our Mongo on Twitter. You could go back and watch some of his classic stuff. But no, it's funny because as KG and I were going back and getting some laughs out of that site, we found a great one, and it ended up being from this week's Nitro. So we popped even more getting to hear it. But no, he's going over the pay-per-view and he's going over his notes, and you hear him getting all flustered. And, boy, you're gonna pay-per-view that one. Just sounds like a complete buffoon. But hey, they put him on TV, so I don't know, whatever. But no, check out that Twitter account and just the goodness that is Mongo McMichael. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off, man.
No, that's fine. That was great. That Twitter account is definitely worth checking out, and just pay-per-view that thing. The finishing touches here on Nitro. Next week we're going to see the TV title be defended as DDP takes on Johnny B. Bad. We have Eddie and Benoit already, so looking forward to that for next week. We have Hacksaw versus Mang. Ric Flair and his mystery partner versus Brian Pillman and Arn Anderson. So the ratings this week, again, we have a 2-6 and a 2-6. Yeah. So we have another tie here, and they both went up slightly from the 2-5s that they shared previously in the week before.
Right. Now, I think that's a telling story right there in itself. Now, it's only a tenth of a point. You wouldn't think it's that big of a deal. But the fact that they both went up, that's showing growth in the industry. We're on our way up. Our old friend Sophie would tell us that's an upward trend. So the business is growing. I think that's, that's a good thing. 2-6 to 2-6 is good. So we'll and like I said last week, we're only going to see that number double and almost triple this time in 2 and 3 years. So the business is growing. The competition is so far it's good for both companies. They're both still finding their footing. They're finding characters that work and don't. They're definitely finding storylines that work and what doesn't. But no, it was another good week. Actually, not much in the action department, but as far as storyline development goes, I'd say we're on track for some good stuff from both the WWF and WCW. But with that said, brings us on to ECW. I thought this was the fun show this week. They were a little all over the place, but I enjoyed it. Started right off with Stone Cold superstar Steve Austin shooting hard on WCW. Gave him a good 7-8 minutes to shoot, and he went off. I enjoyed it. What'd you think, Cage?
Oh, definitely. This was my segment of the week. We have he went on for a 6-minute and 47-second promo. It was great stuff. Really shooting from the hip, shooting from the heart, and he really craps on the ECW arena. He's talking about the Bischoff firing, how he's fired over the phone, and he felt like that wasn't, for somebody that had felt like he had paid his dues in that company. Obviously, he wasn't. It was completely mishandled. He's a bunch of violent crap, as he described the ECW, and nobody could hold back Steve Austin now. So this is, like we talked about before, this is the birth of Stone Cold Steve Austin. Just really great stuff. I enjoyed all 6 minutes and 47 seconds of this promo. I mean, this is just shooting, and it was great.
Yeah, and I feel like they've spent the past couple of weeks kind of tweaking which direction they want this to go, and I really enjoyed it. He's obviously like the superior heel coming in from WCW. He's bitter about what happened, but he knows he's better than all this ECW shit. It was a good angle, good way to keep him strong, still shitting on the competition. Superstar Steve Austin promos, go out of your way to watch them. And especially, it's funny that around the same time, you have Cactus Jack cutting these killer promos, Raven cutting killer promos. A lot of good character work at this point in ECW. Even if it was sloppy in the ring at points or at times, the character work was phenomenal.
The character work is so overlooked. So,
yeah.
I mean, just on this show alone, we're going to jump around a lot here. We don't have a lot of actual in-ring action. So, right. But we have a lot of character development, like you said, and the character development is phenomenal. As we get through the show, we'll try to spotlight that a little bit more. So following the Superstar Steve Austin bit, we have Lance Wright doing Hype Central. We have Mikey versus Sandman's ladder match upcoming on the next kind of like their pay-per-view, I guess. They didn't have their pay-per-views yet at this point, but their big show that's on Saturday nights, that's going to be the next one as we spotlight Gangster's Paradise on previous shows. We have Woman and the Sandman promo, which I really enjoyed. We have Taz flying through a promo. Taz was it was like, Taz, give me 30 seconds on Jason, go. And it was just, it was like, holy cow, you know, it was just like, you know, so when we see this great character work, like you said, with Steve Austin and Cactus Jack and Raven, and then we see someone like Taz, who hasn't really found his niche yet as a mic guy, who I know later as he develops, I thought he was pretty good, or like a Tommy Dreamer, you know, that really stick out because we're seeing such great work in between it.
Right. No, this was definitely odd for the Taz style of promo. He seemed either like he was rushed or like he was on crack cocaine for the 30 seconds of promo time. But normally he's slow, to the point, quiet. You have to listen, almost that Jake Roberts style of you have to listen. He makes you listen for what's important, what's coming. Just speed read through the whole thing, speed promo. So it almost he missed it. He missed the effectiveness because it was too fast.
And I heard him mention Lou Thesz.
Yeah, I missed half of it. Fed through the whole thing. But
one thing I wanted to spot.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna bring up the fact we saw a spotlight on the Eliminators, and great tag team, one of the all-time great tag teams, certainly in ECW. One of my favorite tag teams. If you guys have not had a chance to take a look at it, the Eliminators, of course, Perry Saturn and John Cronus, go back and watch these guys. They're awesome. They're bigger guys, but they can go, man. They were awesome, and you've seen a little bit of it. We covered them and the Steiner brothers, I believe, but awesome tag team.
Yeah, for sure. And they're still pushing this promo. The next segment, we'd actually see a Steiner Brothers promo on the Eliminators. So they're really pushing the Eliminators. This is the way they're going. The classic Steiner Brothers promo. Steiner Brothers, Rick and Scott Steiner. Just over the top, good stuff. But this was a perfect feud. The Steiners didn't last long in ECW, but I thought every pairing that they had, either with or against somebody, was great stuff. The Eliminators was a dream match at the time. Putting them with Taz for their 6-man stuff was awesome. The Steiner brothers at this point in ECW were awesome fit. So great pickup by Paulie or Todd Gordon or whoever got them in for the short run they did.
Definitely.
They added a lot to these shows for sure. Next up, we saw another segment for Beulah's Box. They're still pushing the PO Box. This was a little, even for ECW, I thought this was a little much, a little too over the top for me. But they needed to fill time, and they needed to get her on TV, I guess. So that is what it is.
Box is always open.
Sure. Next up, we finally saw Jason versus Taz. This was a quick one. It was the important part about this match. I thought it was the debut of the Kata Hajime, the Taz mission. They didn't call it the Taz mission yet. That would come later on in a few years. But this was that head and arm choke. They're really starting to push Taz as like the jiu-jitsu submission specialist. So it was the debut of the Kata Hajime. Quick finish for Taz, and then a bunch of schmaz antics after this one. It ended up leading to a couple different matches. Anything else on Taz and Jason portion of this segment?
Well, we did have Fonzie come out and mention the fact that Taz had failed his physical. Then that was all a ploy for Jason to come in and jump Taz, which had started this match. Like you said, he choked him out real quick. Jason, after he had gotten choked out, claims that it was an illegal choke. And then Jason starts bullying around this masked kid that comes out, El Puerto Ricano. Did I say that right?
El Puerto Riqueño.
Riqueño, I'm sorry. So that leads us to our next bit. But before that, we had ECW fan cam with Raven and Cactus. Let's see, as they watch on. So as we cut away from that, we went back to the match, purposely done. So actually, no, that was the end of that bit, right? Jason bullied him. We didn't see them face each other yet at this point. Is that correct?
Well, I think it ended up leading to the Cactus Jack coming out for his match against.
Oh, right. That's right. So he faced. That's right. So this was interesting. This was fun for me to watch. Cactus Jack. I'm sorry, I couldn't read my notes. Cactus Jack like purposely works a boring style rest hold match. Right. Just to stick it to the ECW fans that I'm not going to drop the cactus elbow onto the floor. You're not going to see my DDT, whatever. You're going to see a headlock for 10 minutes on this kid who eventually starts getting some heat on him.
Yeah, the crowd started a wave. They picked up on the bit pretty quick, so they were had to entertain themselves for the duration of this match. But it told a good story. It went along with the promos Cactus has been cut in the past few weeks, where these ECW fans, they don't deserve me. They certainly don't deserve the hardcore style. They're not going to get that Cactus elbow. So they're going to get the bare minimum Cactus Jack, and I thought it was brilliant. It was so bad, it was brilliant. It was good. So, but it was just a long line of more to come with that segment. The segment wasn't over. They continued the beatdown. Raven got in on the beatdown of poor El Puerto Riqueño, knowing that it would eventually bring Tommy Dreamer out. Tommy, the ultimate babyface, has to do the right thing and make the save.
That's right.
So I love the booking there because obviously the two heels, they have no issue with this little punk kid, but they realize beating the crap out of him for so long is going to bring out Tommy, and that's what they really wanted. Tommy gets some heat, gets some action, but of course succumbs to the numbers. We see a killer beatdown, just really taking to him through a table,
some barbed wire,
busting him up real good. So this is a long running story here, but Cactus and Raven have gotten the better of Tommy Dreamer once again, or at least so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you mentioned, the table spot with the barbed wire, they were really putting it to Tommy. And of course, after they were done dismantling Tommy, the barbed wire elbow drop through the table, we see the Pitbulls, who are going to come and run off Cactus and Raven, the tag team champions at this point. So we cut away again from the in-ring action, and we take a look at Too Cold, who is now laughing at Tommy Dreamer. And then we have Lance Wright with Tommy is going to have a partner. So Tommy's going to have a partner here to take on Raven and Cactus. Yep. What did we have from here? It's a great promo to follow here.
Yeah, actually had Raven's first promo since we've started the show. This is the first time I've actually heard from Raven in our 6 weeks of research here. And he's a great promo guy alone, let alone the fact that he's paired up with Cactus Jack. And it's unfair because Raven cut a hell of a promo himself that led right into Cactus taking it. And it outshadowed everything that Raven actually had to say. But this actually was my segment of the week for the entire 3 hours of footage was Cactus and Raven together. I thought this was brilliant. Cactus, again, just going through his story, his weeks of tirade against Tommy. You just should have just come with me to WCW. It didn't have to be like this. Brilliant story, brilliant storytelling. Probably one of my favorite storylines from '95 in ECW was Raven Tommy dynamic. Adding Cactus to it was a great touch.
Oh, absolutely. And this was a close one between me and Stunning Steve and this one because they were both so good. It's funny how each week we're kind of finding our segments of the week on this show, but I just loved how Cactus, he's trying to save Tommy Dreamer. He's trying to say, listen, you stay in this shithole too long. Can I say that? You stay in ECW too long, and you become damaged goods, Tommy. You need to you need to get out of here. You need to take that big contract from WCW, which actually at this point I don't think was really a thing, but eventually that there actually are some contract negotiations supposedly that went on between Tommy and WWE or or WCW. So it was really good. It was fantastic work. Of course, we're setting up for our next show, which will be October 28th. That they're talking about, kind of like their big pay-per-view event, although they're not quite at that point yet. And Tommy Dreamer's mystery partner is none other than Amarillo, Texas.
He did this with a little in-ring segment where he had his guy on the phone. So he's able to get the crowd into the whole announcement, and he goes, "Well, you can tell my partner Terry Funk," to a huge pop, huge ovation. Terry Funk will be back in ECW. We go off the air with Terry Funk in the back with his crazy branding iron, the flaming branding iron, a staple of Terry Funk matches. So the hype is on. Terry Funk will be back in ECW to help his buddy Tommy Dreamer against Raven and Cactus Jack. That's some classic, some legendary names, and something to look forward to for sure. So ECW, I think, got the show of the week this week, even with very little in-ring action. A lot of storyline progression, and just more interesting stuff than what's going on at the main two, I think, right now.
All right, so following ECW here, as we saw Terry Funk going to be in Tommy's Corner for the next big show that they have for October 28th, 1995. Lots to look forward to in the upcoming weeks. We have the big the cage match before our In Your House pay-per-view. So next week we have the cage match between Bret Hart and the Evil Dentist Isaac Yankem in the big blue cage. We
Funny
have
to know, we just had a cage match on Nitro this week. So maybe the two shows, maybe trying to top one another, trying to a little one-upsmanship, maybe. Whatever you can do, I can do better, maybe, perhaps. A little speculation there. Yeah.
The ratings would dictate that. They have tied the last 2 weeks, so they're going to be trying to, up the ante here, I would imagine.
Sure.
As we saw WCW, we're going to see the debut of Chris Benoit. He's going to take on Eddie Guerrero, who just recently debuted. And, of course, Ric Flair's mystery partner versus Brian Pillman and Arn Anderson. And, of course, we're still building towards the October 28th show, like I mentioned, for ECW Hardcore TV. We'll probably see some more stunning Steve Austin, some more Cactus Jack, and some more great work out of ECW, as we've seen our show of the week, if we have one. But yeah, that's about it for this week's show.
Yep. Nope. Same thing. A little bit more going on with ECW, like we said, but that's all right. They're all building towards their end of the month shows, so we're coming up on that very soon here. Next week, we're actually going to step away from the format just slightly. Going to take a quick pause due to some personal issues on my end. We're going to do a special little watch-along episode. Going to break format from the Monday Night Wars. We're actually going to watch a Raw from 1993 by request. So be on the lookout for that one. We'll set it all up for you. You don't have to do any research this week. If it's a watch-along, you'll watch it along with us. You'll listen for our audio, and you'll watch. It's going to be an episode on the WWE Network. That's the only thing we ask is if you have your networks propped up and ready to go, we'll have that for you at some point. I think it should be ready for the same release time next week. So next week will be a quick breakaway from the format, but we'll be back with week 7 the following week. I think we'll be back on track. So we're looking forward to that, seeing how a watch-along episode goes. But no, for this week, fun stuff, but nothing groundbreaking. I think that's a fair way to sum up this week's TV.
Yep, we're still building towards the big pay-per-views. We got Halloween Havoc coming up. We have In Your House and the October 28th ECW, their big kind of pay-per-view. So yeah, looking forward to a lot of things going on. But that's about it for this week. Thanks for watching, Sig.
Right on. Nope, that's everything on the West Coast end. So we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for checking us out. Subscribe, YouTube, good deal, all that good stuff. Help us out and get those numbers up. Thanks for watching, guys.